There is an industry built on the suffering of children. The maw's mechanical cacophony drowns out the occasional whine, but otherwise its small prisoners remain silent, frozen in despair. In the heart of this metallic, waterlogged cage, a little girl awakes, unprepared for what awaits her. This is the beginning of Little Nightmares, a horror video game filled with grotesque monsters, beautiful design, and a lot of lore. Lore that, to me, as a survivor of childhood trauma, feels like home. My name is Juno, your local Mothman. Welcome to my channel where we talk about art, the internet, and how they make us feel. And today we will be talking about Little Nightmares, a series close to my heart. This video will be different from my usual videos. As a person that went through a lot of the things that the games fictionalize and artfully portray, I think that I have insight that will deepen your understanding of the series. Therefore, this video will be both about Little Nightmares and me. Due to the nature of this video, I am right now giving you a content warning. Even though nothing graphic will be shown or discussed, themes of all kinds of abuse happening to children will be talked about. This video has been created thanks to the support of my Patreons: Fungus Finder, LEJBR, Super Orlok, Sharoli, Smiley Face Upside Down, Look, Listless Lizard, The Julo, Tech Candle, Vanish, Nairbo, Yuki, Vivian is here, Russ, Robert V. Aldrich, Zach Buddy, Casey Valentine, Labol, Rosemary, Nezzy, Renvis, Roses in Water, and Alan Forevan. With that said, let's together brave the smothering fog of the world of Little Nightmares so that we can uncover how cruelly the world treats the most vulnerable of us. We will be going through the first two games and analyzing each monster we encounter. I will not be talking in this video about Little Nightmares 3 because the original studio did not have control over this game and it's felt in every way possible. Little Nightmares is a game that is built like most other horror games. You go from one area to another, from one boss to another, either exiting the map victorious or replaying it over and over again until you understand their quirks. However, I think that the devs use this structure to explore the way a traumatized child experiences the world. The games are good at showcasing the reality of living life with never-ending fear. At every corner there is a new enemy. You have to walk on eggshells to ensure that you're not at the receiving end of an enraged outburst. Replaying levels mimics how having to navigate a dangerous situation is a constant occurrence, and while the monsters have predictable animation loops and paths, even the smallest of missteps will end in a game over. On top of that, it's commonly recognized that victims of abuse end up in situations that re-traumatize them. That's exactly what happens to Six when she enters the maw, since the second game's events happen before the first. Speaking of the maw, the setting isn't without reason. The watercraft is isolated, with dangerous waters surrounding it. The only ship that comes to it only brings more suffering to the children locked inside. An island in the middle of stormy waters is exactly how I would describe a difficult home life to be. Six and the rest of the kids are stuck in a place with no escape, and the outside world feels even more dangerous. When we're kids, we need the adults in our life to protect us from harm, but when they fail to do that, when they themselves inflict the harm, the children end up completely isolated. And in this isolated place, not built for her, where Six squeezes through gaps in the walls and crawls through vents, we meet our first enemy. The janitor is a short man with an even shorter temper. He's blind, yet does his job of preparing the children for processing very diligently. Around the janitor, you have to walk on eggshells. The second he hears a creak, his long arms snap forward, capturing Six in an unforgiving grasp made of uncomfortably long fingers. This enemy teaches us the most important lesson for surviving in the maw. If you want to live, no one can see or hear you. If you do not want the wrath of the adults to focus on you, they cannot know you're there. This is a lesson a lot of us learn very young and carry with us into our adult lives. Speaking up for yourself is very difficult if your main objective for years has been to be invisible, and feels like those arms are still right there, ready to reach for you and enact punishment for every misbehavior. That's why when Six cuts off his arms, it feels as if she is ending his reach and his power over her. You could interpret this act as her not letting the abuse get to her anymore. She's done with constantly escaping, she's angry at what's happening, and she takes drastic action to stop him. This is the first violent thing Six does in this game, and it feels justified. It feels righteous. Once we escape the grasp of the janitor, we enter the kitchens. The chefs often go overlooked in monster analysis videos, and I think that's a mistake. What the chefs represent to me is a very important part of an abusive environment. If the janitor is the direct abuser that puts his hands on the children, the guests and the lady are the beneficiaries of the system, then the chefs are the enablers. They themselves don't kill the children, they only process the meat. They upkeep the status quo. The chefs, to me, represent members of the family that know exactly what's going on, but don't do anything about it. Without the chefs, the mall could not function. Without the enablers, those who benefit from the plight of children wouldn't have anything to benefit from. When we enter the dining hall, all the adults are shown to be nothing more than hungry pigs, throwing themselves at Six, ready to devour her despite the mountains of food on their plates. They are completely removed from how their food has been created, simply chasing after Six in the hopes of consuming even more. The same could be said about our modern society. Are you aware of how many things in our world have been made using child labor? The makeup you wear, the electronics you use probably have mica in them that has been mined by children in Madagascar or India. The clothes you wear have been made for pennies by teenage girls. The food you eat, the coffee you drink, the cigarettes you smoke, all of those things have been made using child slave labor. The US Department of Labor recognizes over 204 goods that use child or forced labor to produce. In every aspect of your life, you are probably coming in contact or using products made with tears, blood, and the lives of children. The International Labour Commission estimates that around 22,000 children die as the result of child labor, and that doesn't count the children that develop various diseases as the result of their work and die later in life. In many ways, we are just like the guests. I have been raised with a mindset of treasuring the couple things that you own and only buying something if you really need it. And so I have a pretty limited closet, composed mostly of secondhand items. I use a ThinkPad from 2014 that my dad gave me, and the only two big purchases in my life have been my drawing tablet and a suitcase. And maybe that's why it's so difficult for me to understand the urge to overconsume that seems to rule over the lives of so many people. To me, the influencers that do never-ending fast fashion hauls are just like the guests that don't really care about what they're eating. They just consume and consume and consume. The change in tone from the dining hall to the ladies' quarters is stark. The dining hall and its guests are loud and disgusting, while the latter level is quiet and sorrowful. The lady likes to pretend that she's above it all, detached from the grotesque guests and workers of the mall by status and physique. She doesn't mingle with anybody, simply watching and avoiding others and herself. The lady is terrified of her own reflection. I believe the lady doesn't want to face the system that she has created. She doesn't want to face the monster that she has become. She hides away and isolates herself in fear that someone will expose her for who she is, and indeed, whenever someone tries to get close to her, she lashes out. Six is only able to defeat her by using a mirror. I believe that the lady is the only monster in the game that fully understands what is happening. The janitor is dedicated to his role, but he doesn't seem to be doing what he is doing out of sadism. The chefs are focused on their jobs, the guests' faces are completely blank as they gouge themselves on the meat. The lady is the only person that purposefully acts like she's above the system, but again, the system clearly benefits her. She is on the top, holding insane power over everyone at the mall. So despite her disgust at herself and others, she is complicit. Despite the game not really addressing gender dynamics, I think it's important that the big bad of the game is a woman. Not only because it shows us directly what Six can become, but also because frequently we treat women like children and act like they're incapable of harm. Not to mention the fact that many privileged and older women in real life revel in inflicting pain onto other women and children. If you're a woman, you know that no one will tear you down as fast and as cruelly as another woman. They of course do it for the same reason why Six snaps in the end. If you can't beat them, join them. If you don't believe you can escape the system, join the system. If from childhood you've been conditioned to hate your body, to see your sexuality as disgusting, to believe yourself to be inferior, once you escape, you lash out, but not at the system that created you, but on its current victims. We see this way of thinking taking over Six. As Six moves through the story, she becomes more and more like the adults that abuse her. She grows one with the mall's values of insatiable hunger, violence against the weak, corrupting her. With time, Six needs more and more and more and more to feel satisfied, and that is a clear analogy for the game's themes of overconsumption and the gradual corruption of all parties in the system, even the victims. But I have my own interpretation of Six's hunger. Do you ever feel like there is something missing? No matter how happy or comfortable your day-to-day life is, there always is a piece of you that is missing. You try to fill the void with food or sex, maybe meaningful relationships or friendships. And that might work for a moment until the feeling of emptiness reappears. It's almost as if no one can give you enough attention, no one can love you enough, no food can satiate the never-ending hunger. So when Six, in the most important scene in the entire game, lunges at the gnome that has been helping her, it only feels right. Six's hunger grew and grew as she descended deeper into the maw, and just like in real life, once she found someone that actually was kind to her, she devoured them. The same way, many traumatized people can be off-putting and turn into abusers themselves. Once they get comfortable with you, they might vomit out all the horrific things that have happened to them. They might drown you in their own feelings of inferiority and depression. They might start pushing boundaries, testing your reactions in manipulative ways as a way to 100% confirm that you aren't going to hurt them. They might even sometimes treat you the way they have been treated. Six's actions reflect that issue. Very traumatized people can end up deeply hurting others. Six sometimes hugs the gnomes, the same way the lady caresses her dolls, and I think that this is one of the most heartbreaking parts of their characters. Both Six and the lady yearn for love. They care at some level about the children, they want to give them comfort, yet they've been so brutalized by this world, they've been conditioned by the system to believe that it is their right as the stronger ones to abuse those below them. That despite their ability to change the system, they never do. And when Six wins the fight against the lady and devours her, she completes the turn of the cycles of abuse. She is now the predator. She's no longer the victim. But instead of saving the other children, she goes on a massacre, firmly establishing herself at the top of the food chain. The second game builds on the ideas established by Little Nightmares 1. But this time, instead of focusing on the industry of overconsumption and child labor, we focus on how the never-ending stream of information damages our society. How do children engage with an overstimulating world, is the question the game asks. This time 6 isn't alone. She has a friend. Mono is another kid trapped in this cruel world, and despite all the harm, Mono is focused on escaping and fighting the system. He is more altruistic than 6, but just like her, he loses himself in the system he is trying to escape, realizing that if he complies, he will have power. Following the theme of the game, the enemies the duo encounter are frequently completely detached and dissociated, but not the first one, not the Hunter. The Hunter to me is the first enemy in the game series that is truly sadistic. All the people at the mall were completely hollowed out, but the Hunter is passionate about hunting. From what we see in his environment, he isn't lacking in resources. He isn't hunting the children out of necessity, however awful that sounds. He's letting the corpses pile up. After escaping the forest and the Hunter, the duo stumbles into a huge building that is housing the school, and with it a bunch of pupils and a teacher. The teacher is the most simple enemy to explain since her connection to the real world is very straightforward. She represents the systemic issues within schools. The modern school system as we know it has been built around this idea that we should mold children into the perfect model citizens. Before the First World War, schools and education were reserved for the rich, and much of the discussion was focused around arts, a subject that encourages free thinking, interpretation, and independence. But nowadays, the humanities and arts have been defaced, seen as unimportant and silly compared to the science and maths that are valued by employers. This change in approach is also seen in how teachers engage with their students. The teacher's role has been elevated from an educator that was meant to widen the child's horizons and teach them important lessons, to someone that supplements in raising the children, since most kids spend the majority of their time at school and studying. The post-industrialist world needed soldiers and workers, and to this day, it receives soldiers and workers. By the time 6 and Mono reach the school, they have already faced countless horrors and trials, and it's not any better at the school. This part of the game is probably the most relatable part of the game for a wider audience that maybe had a very comfortable and peaceful childhood. I think that everyone that has been through the traditional school system has at least one memory where they've been rejected, humiliated, hurt, unfairly treated, disciplined way too harshly for a completely normal mistake. This system creates people that believe that only through achievements and compliance you can be loved. For those students that have troubles at home, teachers frequently add stress, knowingly or unknowingly. One time when I was in 4th grade, I didn't have a separate notebook for religious lessons, which is a thing in Poland, and I got in big trouble for it. I couldn't explain to the teacher that the reason I didn't have a notebook was because I was terrified to ask my parents for anything. The teacher in Little Nightmares has a very long neck. She looks like a snake, the symbol of betrayal. Schools could be a place of reprieve for children. Instead, it's often their personal hell. We see the effects of this kind of treatment by how the students act. The porcelain children are empty shells, echoing the cruelty that has been bestowed on them. And this cruelty is the very centerpiece of the game. In the first game, we were placed in a very dangerous environment. The mall was an unnatural place for a child to be. In the way, it was easier to be divorced from the issues of the mall, since most of us aren't currently stuck on a vertical ship island. But the second game places us in environments that are familiar to us: family homes, a forest, a school, and a doctor's office. None of those places are safe. I have the least to say about the doctor because, just like the teacher, his role directly mirrors how doctors can behave in the real world. His entire area in the game is a commentary on the medical mistreatment of children, whose bodies don't feel like their own. Whether it be for completely innocent reasons like getting a vaccine as a child, or something more insidious like being taken away from your home for treatment for prolonged periods of time, doctors frequently become monsters in the eyes of children. In Little Nightmares 2, the doctor tries to fix the children, and when that fixing fails, he instead decides to build his own mannequins. The only adults that aren't actively antagonizing the children are the Watchers. Adults that have been so consumed by their need to be distracted that they don't care about what's happening around them. And this is the other side of the coin that makes a childhood traumatic: neglect. A lot of traumatized people find themselves occasionally dropping huge information bombs on the people that they trust. It's as if the act of opening up so rapidly, spitting out a terrifyingly simple admission, is euphoric. In a lot of media that has traumatized characters, their backstories are often used for shock value. Much less often do we talk about the profound effects of neglect on children. Realizing that your caregivers simply don't care about you is one of the most upsetting realizations any child can come to. The trauma of neglect is also much more casual. It comes in the form of daily occurrences. It feels almost irrelevant, as if bringing up the fact that there was never enough food in the fridge, or that nobody ever taught you how to take care of your hygiene, would only make the other person deeply uncomfortable and a bit sad rather than shocked. There is no power to be gained by spitting out that you never got to celebrate your birthday. No one will recoil if you confess that your caregivers know nothing about you or your passions. And so, neglect is overlooked. The Watchers and their detachment are in many ways less memorable than the other enemies, but their impact on the world of Little Nightmares is just as strong. They have the power to change, to invite Six and Mono for a warm meal, to show some humanity and care, but they never do, so consumed by consuming to even notice them. At this point in the story, Mono takes lives liberally, without thought as a means to an end. He, too, just like Six, becomes corrupted by the system, and just like Six, he is doomed to become something that his innocent self hates: abused children growing into abusive, scary adults. With that, we enter the final part of the game, and even though the children don't know it yet, we are edging closer and closer to tragedy. When Six gets kidnapped, and we see how the signal tower corrupted her, to me personally, her transformation is an example of how much people fear children. That might sound ridiculous, but let me explain. The trope of the psychopath child immediately comes to mind. Dr. Kathleen Kellett made a fantastic video on this topic, it will be linked down below, but to synthesize what she talked about, in our society we view children as these pure and innocent creatures rather than complex human beings. This leads to a deep fascination and fear of children that don't act like they're supposed to. And so this concept of the devil child, a child that is born evil, is endlessly used in pop culture as a horror trope, to the detriment of actual children. Innocence is a tool that is frequently used against children and is also commonly fused with obedience. Kids are supposed to be pure and pleasant. However, since children are little humans and not mythical creatures, they will act like humans with much less self-control. They will be mean and petty, destructive, thoughtless, selfish, cruel, and it is our role as adults to guide and help these kids in becoming well-adjusted adults. However, the blame for not being perfect is often placed on the child, rather than their environment. Six's environment made her the way she is, but here she is transformed into a grotesque monster. If you look at kids that went through trauma, they often act in very inappropriate ways. I, for one, got in trouble for hitting other kids at daycare, which I was of course punished for, but my teachers didn't really consider where I learned that hitting was a reasonable response to someone stealing a crayon. Children with a past of sexual abuse frequently attempt to initiate sexual contact with adults, not because they are deviant, but because of their trauma. Children reflecting their environment is a very complex topic, yet the most it's showcased in media is through the lens of the school bully with an abusive dad. So to me personally, this choice to make 6 physically monstrous was an interesting reflection on how we view kids with adverse social behaviors caused by trauma. But there's also another angle to this, one that I think is what the developers intended to be the main interpretation. Mono knows that in order for them to progress and get out, he needs to destroy the music box. He understands that the toy that symbolizes 6's childhood is what is holding her back from fully achieving agency. And indeed, in order to preserve her innocence, 6, instead of growing up, transforms into a disfigured, monstrous version of her child self. I think that it is very difficult to truly grow up after an early life full of trauma. And that's because a part of you automatically associates adulthood with pain. You've seen how the adults around you turned out, and you want to be nothing like them. Another aspect is that you might not want to grow up out of spite. These people, these monsters, took away your innocence. They stole the peaceful, happy childhood that you were supposed to have away from you. And now here you are as an adult expected to do what? Function the way everyone is supposed to, despite the fact that you do not have the skills necessary to do that? Becoming stuck in childhood as a form of resistance is much more comfortable than truly outgrowing what you once were. And that's because it is very difficult to outgrow what you are. It is near impossible to leave what happened to you behind because trauma fundamentally changes your brain chemistry. A lot of traumatized individuals struggle with mental illness that forever changes how they interact with the world. Now, as an adult, not only do you have to brave the oppressive systems that drag everybody else down, you also have to do so while dealing with depression, a personality disorder, and CPTSD. And the last one of those causes many people to deal with flashbacks, which make escaping trauma almost impossible. That's why when traumatized people get scolded for not functioning correctly or ask what their plans are, they clam up and become aggressive. Because the idea of functioning correctly in this world feels like an impossible task, and for the most part, they're just focused on surviving, not on what comes next. So, while Mono views destroying the music box as the way forward, to 6 it seems like her only friend, the only person she trusts, destroyed the singular source of comfort she has in this uncaring, hostile world. And since she has learned that this is a dog-eat-dog world, instead of letting him live and leaving together, waiting for when he decides to betray her again, she abandons him, preferring to be alone than to be with someone who could hurt her. And with that, their fates are sealed, with Mono forever trapped in a time loop that leads to his own annihilation, and 6 on a path that leads her to them all. Just like Mono that is trapped in a never-ending time loop, the same can be said about the effects that prolonged trauma has on us. Reliving the same events over and over and over again, the ghosts of our past never ceasing the haunting. Even if you manage to escape the nightmare, you just end up stranded in an unpredictable, dangerous world with no place to fall back to. The world of Little Nightmares is hopeless. All of the children meet terrible ends, their resilience and fight only making them more depraved over time. While making this video, I had to give up on one of my biggest principles of making videos. Do not, under any circumstance, let the audience know too much about you. This video came to be because I added it without much thought as an option to a poll where my subscribers can choose what video they want to see from me. I thought the Disney video would win, but no. Overwhelmingly, my core audience wants me to talk about Little Nightmares and trauma. So here I am, weighing every word I say. My mom, who is a psychotherapist for children and teens, always stressed to me the idea of responsibility. That my emotions are my responsibility, that my symptoms are something that I need to control, that in order to be good, you need to have all of those things on lockdown. You can never depend on other people, you have to learn how to handle your mental illness alone, because you cannot be a burden. This lesson stayed with me and it impacts how I approach friendships, relationships, and also my own art. And yes, to me YouTube counts as art. Making this video feels like pulling teeth. However, it is impossible for me to divorce my own lived experience from the topic of the video. Since I originally stumbled across Little Nightmares years ago, the game moved me deeply, and not exposing why that is would be a form of self-betrayal. Either way, making this video was a challenge, but one that I think was worth the struggle. We all need to address and examine the things that have happened to us. Only through self-acceptance and looking internally can we grow. You have agency, even if the symptoms caused by trauma rule your life. Don't let your story... While editing this video, I realized that I didn't like the ending of it. I always try to make the endings of my videos hopeful, but this time, as I read out the words I wrote before, they rang hollow to me. Not because I was being disingenuous, I am chronically over-serious and genuine to a fault, but because what do I even say? What words can I put at the end of a YouTube video that will help to make sense of whatever you, the viewer, went through? What can I say that will make sense of what I went through? Especially after talking about two games that feel so hopeless. Don't get me wrong, 6 is shown to have escaped the torment of them all, but what does that change? Mono is stuck in the tower growing cruel. The children locked in cages will probably be devoured by the remaining workers of the mall, or they will starve to death. What about the gnomes? Little Nightmares isn't a series that pretends to have answers to these questions. It is a series that, just like the name suggests, is about the nightmares of childhood, not how to wake up from them. But I can't imagine a video where I go, well, that's it folks, to live is to suffer, there is no escape and there is no hope, please subscribe. No, I can't imagine a life lived like that. Maybe there are no meaningful words I can say that will fix whatever has happened, but I want to believe in a better future. What else can I do? What else can we do? I pointed out that 6 leaving the children behind is cruel, but perhaps the writers are telling us that only through perseverance can you escape. Sitting still won't free you of your cage. So I want to believe that 6 gets off the mall safely, that she builds herself a small boat and drifts off into a brighter future. And I want to believe that we can do that too. Thank you for watching this video to the end.